I want to remember my mama, the late Mother Ruth Ella Langston, who was a fierce Pentecostal evangelist. She didn't take no stuff. She'd send you to hell in a handbasket in a moment. But she held on to me, and I held on to her until our theologies kissed each other. And I want to say to you that our parents, our godparents, our supporters have often been people who have endured ridicule and blame from their peers for supporting us. And they endured it. The anger, the silence, the shame. And many of our parents and those who brought us along and mentored us have also been parents of people who have lived and died with HIV. Many lost their children to the virus with very little support from their churches, religious leaders, and peers, and often with little support from us in the larger same-gender loving community. And I've stood by the side of bedsides of many mothers who sat with their sons, often their only sons. And because their sons were dying with HIV, we looked around for church people. We looked around. Where were the people? But even more than that, where were the people who are in this room and represented in this room in support of those parents and those mothers and those people? And it's a huge group of people that could be allies to us that we're missing altogether. I want the time to come when the Task Force Creating Change Conference has a luncheon and a banquet just for mamas and daddies, just for big mamas and other mamas and big daddies and nanas. Come on now. And Uncle Bubba and Aunt Maddie and all of them, and we can bring them together. And we can then do something for them and let them know how much we appreciate their support for us. We have a responsibility to acknowledge their struggle and to create a safe place to love and appreciate them. Additionally, there is a need for those of us who do the work of HIV education and marriage equality to stop for a minute in this moment and assess the place from which we do our work. It's time for us to do our work from a place of calm, self-assured confidence so that we don't lose ourselves and also lose our connections to those we need and those who need us. Much of the rhetoric that came from the passage of Proposition 8 in California depicted African-American church folks as rabidly homophobic and haters of same-gender people. But when you visit churches where the yes on 8 fear was espoused, you see a visual oxymoron. Gay people just everywhere. Not just in the choir, because you know I have real refined gaydar. I know gay when I see it. I don't care how you dress it up. I don't care what kind of robe it's got on. It's an essential essence that comes out. It's like a pheromone. I know it when I see it. Gay folks, not just in the choir, but in the pulpit, on the deacon board, working on the sound system, everywhere in the house promoting abuse for themselves and truly believing that it is God's will. Many of them did not feel good about it, but they felt constrained, as did many of the other members of the church, by what they feel is the correct theology and doctrine. Now, what precipitates this? Because these are the folks that need us, brothers and sisters. What precipitates this? We are often not confident enough in our own life story, or may I say our God story, to share it confidently. And so this is a teaching moment before I take my seat. That's what Pentecostal preachers say before they sit down. Before I take my seat. This is a time to stand and not run, a time to heal and a time not to destroy. But there is a pathology we must address. Let's define the psychosis just for a minute. Same-gender loving people who contribute to their own oppression by continuing to support faith communities and churches that oppress them. And when we are complicit in structures that support homophobia, homo-hatred, hetero-privilege, and when we encourage internalized homophobia, something what I call similar to the battered spouse syndrome, where we say, I love my church, and they only talk about gay people once a quarter. And all the rest of the time, they just own the money. It's similar to the person that says, I love my partner, they only beat me up once a quarter. but all the rest of the time, they support me. And when we support church leaders that seek to define themselves as straight at the expense of their same-gender loving parishioners and publicly dehumanize those same-gender loving parishioners and privately sleep with those same-gender loving parishioners, we have a psychosis and a pathology that needs to be addressed. That is our reality. Make no mistake about it. I counsel hundreds of pastors and preachers who come to me by night about their by-night occurrences and situations and are trying to figure out what are they going to do because they're leaking all over the place. How will they live if they become found out for what their realities really are? I also counsel any number of young men, particularly, who come to me and say to me, Bishop, I'm living with HIV. I'm a same-gender loving man. Nobody in my church knows. I cannot tell them. I cannot receive services in my hometown because everybody in the town knows my face. And so I have to go miles and miles away. And I have seen way too many young men die way too soon for no reason other than the fact that they were hiding from church people. That saddens me greatly. And what's the rest of this pathology, Pastor? Many same-gender loving people that I deal with around churches have a need for big church. Now, those of you that don't know Pentecostal church and Methodist church and Baptist church, you may not be able to say amen about this. But those of you that know church, any church people in the room? Yeah. Let me tell you, there's a need sometimes among same-gender loving people for big church. Big church carries with it a certain anonymity. You can get in and get out. And a need to identify with the perceived success of the megachurch. And other causes include support for traditional church leadership. I know a whole lot of same-gender loving people that just love a pastor and a pastor's wife. In fact, pastors' wives wouldn't even know how to dress if it weren't for that cadre of gay men that take that girl down to Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue and get her hair weaved. Come on now. Dress her up, put in some fabulous pumps, and when she rolls up looking like she just stepped out of a bandbox, somebody's trying to understand where to get the gay men. They really wish they could be her, but they can't be her, so they dress her. Let me stop. This is a part of our reality. Then there are those who benefit financially from the church, and the secrecy seems to be an economic imperative. The public ridicule of same-gender loving people may often be an effort to hide the reality of the presence of same-gender loving people. Churches do this. So the sickness has resulted in the destruction of the self-esteem. The destruction of the self-esteem results in the prevalence of HIV. Open, vicious attack against the personhood of countless individuals and their families has produced self-inflicted theological and physical violence, duplicity, inauthentic leadership. Some leaders are themselves same-gender loving and bisexual, and they know it. Loss of valuable members, lack of focus on vital justice issues, and ministry destruction when people's realities are found out. There are numerous examples of churches disproportionately populated by same-gender loving people who are not only bereft of affirmation, but live in an atmosphere of continual debasement, degradation, fear of exposure, which has led to suicide, disenfranchisement from church, addiction, and self-destructive behavior. And the light that is being cast on this disparity is no accident. Brothers and sisters, it is the active will of God. The cover is coming off everywhere. And finally this oppression is not making same-gender loving people straight. We do know that, right? It is driving same-gender loving people further underground. So the real question is, what actions are necessary to move churches beyond toleration to acceptance to affirmation that leads to a reduction in rates of HIV and the celebration of the same-gender community and acknowledges the extraordinary contributions of same-gender loving people to the church community? There would be no gospel music if there weren't for same-gender loving people. And who in the world would design the church interior? Everything would be black and navy blue. What is the alternative for those who cannot wait for this change to occur? And brothers and sisters, what is our responsibility as same-gender people to participate in our own freedom? Take these action items home with you. First of all, we have to encourage our people to faithfully support affirming churches. It is time for a FUBU principle to happen among us. For us, by us. Education regarding the full inclusion of same-gender loving people in the life of the church. Active involvement in inclusive theological education. Active involvement in education regarding human sexuality. Commitment to ethical behaviors. Church folks need to start telling the truth. How about that for a novel concept? Authenticity and truth-telling. And then confrontation when misinformation, destructive comments, oppressive theology, and dehumanization occurs. One of the greatest books I have ever read, Edwin Friedman wrote, is called The Failure of Nerve. If you haven't read it, get it. Edwin Friedman warns against rewarding dysfunction by responding dysfunctionally. An example of this is the post-Proposition 8 angry responses that we've heard, where we were first, as same-gender loving people, demonized and vilified in order to make it okay to vote against our freedoms, saying that we would oppress children, and saying particularly to the black community that you will lose the freedom of the African-American pulpit if these folks get an opportunity to fight against this proposition. The reality is that dysfunction was rewarded by more dysfunction. You understand? Dysfunction or demonization, and then we demonized among ourselves. So now, it is particularly difficult for me to hear the rhetoric that came from funders. Can I say that? It's a dangerous thing to say, I know, sometimes as a nonprofit. But I was particularly moved when I heard in side conversations that the outreach to faith communities was going to be reduced because there was not enough of an outcome. I'll go so far as to say it made me angry, because it took a long time to get from Martin to Barack. Did you know that? It didn't happen overnight, but we got there. And just say it with me, we got there. So we can't stop, can we? I can't afford to stop. I can't stop doing the work in the African-American church. No matter how slow it comes, I can't stop. First of all, because those are my people. But also because none of us are free until all of us are free. And so if it takes a little while for some people, then let's just wait for them. Keep working on them. Keep talking to them. Keep preaching to them. Keep telling them the truth. Keep speaking truth to power. Keep making them make a difference. Keep talking about it. Keep praying about it. Keep singing about it. Change is inevitable. Change will happen. Don't give up on us. Don't discount us. And don't suggest that our work is not paying off. God bless you is my prayer.